you're probably here for some relationship advice. So I'm going to pass on a few things to you that may be helpful. I really think they will be helpful. I feel very confident that if you do these things, uh, you may get good results unless you're dealing with somebody that's just like wild. And I'd recommend therapy. But here are just some basic things I want to pass on to help with communication in your relationship. I've learned that people feel like authenticity is important on YouTube. So I'm purposely going to read these off of my phone and give them to you that way rather than doing the whole teleprompter thing or making sure I look directly at the camera like this. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to give it straight to you. Number one of four. Number one, ask questions rather than accusing. So, in many cases, it's normal for us to think that something is going on and whatever we think that the other person is doing to accuse them of that. So, the statement will be, "You are doing so and so," rather than asking, "Is this going on? Did you do this?" There's a difference there. One is accusatory, one is interrogative. It's a question. So, a very basic idea is not to let your emotions get the best of you when you peep something or when you think something's going on. Rather than accusing, ask questions if you cannot prove or verify what you think is going on. Trust your partner enough to then try to verify the information and then come to a conclusion rather than coming to a conclusion based off of missing information. Once again, if you have a partner where you can't even trust their answers to your questions, and that's another whole set of issues. So, for the sake of this point, ask rather than accusing. Number two, don't wait until they're raising an issue to then raise a previous concern. So I know a lot of guys do this, but women do it too. Obviously, we both can be guilty, but guys and some women will have an issue with their partner and never raise it, just kind of suppress it. Uh, and then when their partner is bringing a concern to their attention, "Hey, I have an issue with you concerning this." For whatever reason, many of us choose that time as the opportune time to raise a concern that we've been holding on to for 6 months. And I can't read anyone's heart, obviously, but a lot of times the heart behind it is deflection. I don't like what you're presenting to me. So now I'm going to use something in the stash, bring that up to take the attention off the concern you're raising with me. So we never get to deal with the issue that you originally raised to me because now we're sidetracked by me raising a concern from 6 months ago that I had 6 months to raise. But for some reason, now is the time that I want to bring it up. So once again, these are just very basic things, but we don't recognize how destructive they can be in communication and trust and loving relationships because there's a level of vulnerability that comes from relationships. So when you take advantage of that and kind of manipulate somebody, then you can end up breaking trust and ultimately breaking a relationship. So stay on subject, man up, woman up, deal with what your partner is bringing to you. If you have a legitimate concern, raise that as you're observing it or shortly after you've observed it as a question rather than an accusation. But it is the absolute worst, most trash thing you can do when someone's trying to confront you about an issue they have with you for you to then raise another issue to take the attention off of their issue with you. Deal with their issue with you and then more opportune time, raise your concern. Three, don't guilt the other party for raising concerns because you choose to suppress them. I know that this is huge. So many of us don't know how to deal with conflict. And depending on the type of home that we grew up in, we may avoid issues altogether, especially necessary hard conversations. So our norm may be to just run away from them and to suppress any type of red flag that we see and pretend like it's not there, even though we saw it. What's the worst is when that type of person gets in a relationship with the communicator, because now one party wants to talk about the issue while the other party is suppressing it. And most times the suppressor can project onto the other party. What does this look like? The communicator is trying to talk about an issue. The suppressor will undercut the issue that the communicator is raising and then point out that they've overlooked several things. The statement might be, there's so much I could say, or I overlook so much. And the reality is that's like a crabs in a barrel type thing, where it's, I have this unhealthy behavior, I suppress everything. So who are you to raise stuff? You should be suppressing your stuff like I do. When in reality, the suppressor should be matching the communicator's energy. Communicate more, work on communication. Suppressing never gets you anywhere in a relationship. And lastly, number 4, mature to the point of understanding that discussions and disagreements are not fights. I know the dreaded quote that many of you have heard is, it seems like you just always want to argue. And we're all adults here. We got to recognize that any type of relationship comes with difficulty, and communication is not a personality thing. It's not an opinion based thing. We have to communicate to resolve issues. We have to communicate to get through life. Communication is a base level thing. It's not a preferential thing. So we have to get away from this notion of suppressing things or looking at people that want to talk as instigators. Talking is the base level of communication. So let's be more intentional about looking at behaviors that we have, asking why we do them, and then understanding how they can impact our partners. If you want to learn more or have some more insight about relationship tips, specifically as it relates to Black families and relationships, I'd encourage you to check out my book, Whole Brother, Debunking the Myths That Break the Black Family. It deals with some of these things, and it's helpful for both women and men. But also, if you're in need of a therapist and want to talk through some of these things as a couple or as an individual, be sure to check us out at wholebrothermission.com. Click the Get Help tab, and you can be connected with a therapist in your area.